The stars above the ash-colored moon blinked coldly, like they were watching everything below in silence. Darren, a human explorer and cargo pilot, had crash-landed after his ship was hit by strange debris during a shortcut through a rarely used sector. His craft was damaged. Communication systems were gone. Life support was working, but barely. The place was far from any known planet. He had no idea what this moon even was. He stepped out of his half-buried ship, wearing a light-breathing mask and carrying a flashlight and a scanner. The moon's ground was dusty and dark, like it hadn't been touched for 1,000 years. The silence was deep, too deep. As he walked forward to find shelter, his scanner picked up something unusual. An energy signal, very faint but still active. It was coming from beneath the surface. Curious, and hoping to find a power source, or maybe old tech, he could use to repair his ship, Darren followed the signal. It led him to a small rocky hill, cracked in the middle. Something metallic poked out from inside. A hatch. He knelt down and brushed the dust away. The hatch had strange symbols, not from any known alien language he'd seen in the galactic network. But one button blinked softly, green. He hesitated. Then he pressed it. The hatch opened slowly with a heavy sound, revealing a dark tunnel going deep underground. Darren pulled out his flashlight and carefully climbed inside. The air was thin but breathable. The walls were smooth metal, old and scratched. He kept walking until he reached a large chamber, round, silent, and lit by a faint blue light from the ceiling. In the center of the room, a strange figure was chained to the floor. It was a young alien woman. She had soft, pale, purplish-blue skin and small, delicate ears that curved like an elf's. Her hair was long and silver, spread out like a waterfall behind her. She was beautiful, but also weak, tired, and covered in old scars. Her eyes slowly opened as he stepped closer. "You're not one of them," she whispered, her voice low but clear. "I'm human," Darren said gently. "Are you okay? How long have you been down here?" She looked at him for a long moment, then lowered her eyes. "I don't know how many cycles. Time was forgotten here." Darren moved closer, checking the thick chains that held her hands and ankles. They were made of some kind of energy metal, locked into the floor. "I'm going to get you out," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "You would free me, just like that?" He nodded. No one deserves to be left like this. Using his multi-tool, Darren hacked into the lock. It took some effort, but the chains finally released with a low buzz. She fell forward, weak, and he caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up at him again, her voice shaking now. "You freed me from chains, Earthman, but my kin say you must take us all, or face what follows." Darren stared at her. "Wait, your kin. There are more of you." She nodded slowly and pointed toward a sealed hallway behind her. "Hundreds, sleeping, waiting, bound like me. We were taken and locked here long ago." Darren helped her sit up against the wall and took out a small water pouch. She sipped slowly, her hands trembling. "Why were you all imprisoned?" he asked. "We refused to fight a war for a cruel empire," she replied. "They feared us because we saw truth. So they sealed us here, hidden and forgotten. And now they're waking up. The moment you freed me, they began to stir." Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. The floor vibrated slightly. Then the hallway door hissed and opened slowly. Darren stepped forward and gasped. Inside were rows and rows of glowing pods, each with a figure like the one he had just freed, each one asleep, trapped in time. "This is a prison," he whispered, "but also a city, a buried one." The woman beside him tried to stand. Darren helped her up. "What's your name?" he asked. "Valera," she said softly. "Well, Valera, I think we need to get everyone out, before whatever did this comes back." She shook her head. "It's not just about freedom anymore. Once you break the seal, we are linked to you. You must choose, Earthman. Take us all, or leave, and bear the price. Darren didn't understand what that meant yet, but something deep in his gut told him he just started something bigger than himself, and he couldn't turn back now. Darren stared at the glowing pods. Hundreds of them lined the wide hall, stretching into the shadows. Each one contained a sleeping figure like Valera, still, calm, and unaware of the world outside. The soft blue light pulsed gently through the room, as if the place had waited for this moment for a very long time. Valera stepped beside him slowly, her strength not yet returned. She leaned on his arm, and looked at the sleeping forms. "They are all my kin," she said quietly. "Dreaming, until someone worthy breaks the seal." Darren looked at her, confused. "What do you mean by worthy? I just opened a lock." "No," she said, her silver eyes meeting his. "You chose to help, without knowing who I was, without asking for anything. That is rare. And that is what woke them." Darren was quiet for a moment. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He was a pilot, a trader, a guy who flew supplies between colonies and hoped not to get caught in trouble. But now he was standing in an ancient vault filled with powerful aliens, and they were waking because of him. Suddenly, a loud hum filled the air. The floor under his boots shook lightly. The lights above changed from soft blue to deep green. The pods began to glow brighter, one by one. "They're waking up," Valera whispered. "And when they rise, they will look to you." Darren stepped back. "Me? Why? I don't even know who they are." "You freed the first. That means something to us." The first pod hissed open. Mist poured out from the sides. A tall male figure, with the same pale purplish skin and elf-like ears, stepped out. His eyes were golden and sharp, but his expression was calm. He looked at Darren, then at Valera. "Sister," he said. Valera bowed her head. "Brother." He looked again at Darren. "Is this the one?" She nodded. "The Earthman. He freed me." The male stepped forward and stood tall in front of Darren. "Then we owe him thanks. And now, a question." Darren's heart beat faster. "What question?" "Will you carry the weight of us all?" Darren blinked. What does that even mean?" Valera answered. "Once freed, our people do not scatter. We follow the one who awakened us. That is our way. If you accept us, we will follow you. If you turn away, we must remain here. And the curse of abandonment may follow you." Darren looked around. More pods were opening. More eyes blinking. More people rising. "I didn't come here to lead anyone," he said, feeling nervous. "I just wanted to help someone in trouble." "And you did," said the male. "But now you have a choice. Lead, and we follow. Leave, and we fall back into silence." Darren sighed. His ship was broken. No one was coming to save him. Maybe this was his only real chance now. He looked at Valera. "What would happen if I say yes?" "You will not be alone," she said. "We will help you rebuild your ship, protect you, and go wherever you go. We do not ask for much, only a chance to live again." More and more of them now filled the room, standing tall but silent, waiting for his answer. Darren swallowed. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a leader. But these people had been punished for standing against cruelty. They had been forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, they deserved a second chance. He took a breath. "All right," he said finally. "I accept." The room suddenly echoed with a strange sound, like wind and music mixed together. The aliens touched their fists to their chests and bowed their heads. One by one, they repeated a word: "Zatar." Valera smiled. "They have accepted you as shield-bearer. Now you are one of us." Darren didn't fully understand what was happening, but he felt something shift, like the room itself now recognized him. Then his scanner beeped. He looked down. His ship's emergency beacon, still weak, had picked up a signal in orbit. But it wasn't human. He showed the display to Valera. She frowned. "They found us," she said. "Who?" The ones who put us here. Darren looked at the scanner again. A large ship was in orbit, and it was getting closer. I think we just ran out of time, he said. Velira nodded. Then we must prepare, because they will not come to talk. Darren looked back at the sleeping ones still in their pods, and at those who were now awake. He had taken the first step, and there was no turning back. The cold light from the ancient chamber faded as more pods opened one by one. The once silent vault was now filled with low voices, footsteps, and the soft hum of awakening systems. Darren stood in the middle, surrounded by beings that had been forgotten for centuries. Their eyes looked at him not with anger, but with expectation. Velira stood beside him, stronger now. Her voice was calm but firm. We must move quickly. The enemy is already near. Darren looked down at his scanner again. The ship in orbit was large, 3 times the size of his own. Its signal was encrypted, but he could tell it wasn't friendly. A low pulse from the beacon showed it was scanning the moon. What will they do if they find you? He asked. Velira's face grew serious. They will try to destroy us. Again, this time completely. Darren looked around at the awakening people. Some were still weak. Others already stood tall and alert. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had no army, no powerful weapons, just a damaged ship, a multi-tool, and a moon full of ancient prisoners now calling him their leader. I can't fight a war, Darren said. I'm just one man. You're not just one man anymore, said a deep voice from behind. It was the same tall male who had spoken earlier. His name was Ralvin, Velira's brother. His arms were crossed, his golden eyes steady. You are shield bearer now. That means you lead, but we fight beside you. Darren rubbed his face, thinking, even if I accept that, how do we win? We don't have weapons, no defenses, no escape. Velira walked to a panel on the far wall and placed her hand on it. The old wall hissed and slid open, revealing the hidden armory. Inside were strange weapons, sleek, sharp, and unlike anything he had seen before. Armor pieces hung on racks, and shelves were filled with tools, crystals, and tech cubes. These were locked away with us, she said. Our captors feared our strength, so they sealed everything. Darren walked in, eyes wide. This changes everything. Relvin nodded. Now we can prepare. Darren picked up one of the rifles. It was light, but it buzzed with power. He didn't know how to use it, but maybe someone could teach him. Then his thoughts returned to his ship. Even if we fight, we need to repair my comm system. We have to let someone know where we are. Velira tilted her head. The galaxy forgot us long ago. Who would come? Darren looked her in the eyes. Humans don't forget those who stand with them. Maybe they didn't know about you. But if I can send a signal, someone will come. I believe that. Velira was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. Then we must give you the time to fix it. The plan began to form. They would stay hidden inside the vault while Darren worked on his ship. A team of Velira's people would guard the outer area. Others would study the ship in orbit, watching for movement. If the enemy landed, they would set traps, delay them, distract them. Darren worked fast. He ran back and forth between the vault and his ship, carrying wires, tools, and broken panels. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His hands were cut. His eyes burned. But every time he saw the people watching him with hope, he found the strength to keep going. Inside the ship, he finally got the backup comm system online. It was weak, but it could send a short-range message. He sent out a signal. This is Pilot Darren Hayes. Crashed on unknown moon. Not alone. Hostiles may arrive. Need help. He didn't know if it would reach anyone, but he sent it again and again. Back in the vault, Velira checked the outer scanners. The enemy ship is dropping smaller crafts, she said. They are coming. Darren walked in, exhausted but ready. Then let's make them regret it. Relvin smiled. Spoken like a true shield-bearer, Darren looked around at the people preparing for battle. He had never led anyone before, never carried a weapon into a real fight. But something inside him had changed. These people were no longer strangers. They had placed their trust in him, and he wouldn't let them down. He turned to Valera. "If we survive this, what happens next?" She smiled gently. "Then we find a new place to live, a place where we are free. And we do it together." Darren nodded. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing now for sure. He had made the right choice, and whatever came next, he would face it. With them. Darren stood near the entrance of the underground vault, his heart pounding. The atmosphere around him had changed. What was once a silent chamber of forgotten prisoners now felt like a fortress. The alien men and women he had freed moved with quiet purpose, setting up defensive positions and arming themselves with the ancient weapons stored in the hidden armory. Valera approached him, her pale skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. She carried one of the sleek rifles, the same kind Darren had briefly held. She moved with a grace that suggested she was no stranger to battle. "They are almost here," she said, her voice steady. "Smaller crafts are breaking off from the main ship." Darren glanced at his scanner. It confirmed what she said. Multiple smaller signals were descending toward the surface. He didn't know what kind of troops they would face, but he knew they were heavily outnumbered. "They're going to find the wreckage of my ship first," Darren said. "They'll know someone's alive." "Yes," Valera replied. "That will buy us a few minutes. Enough to prepare." Ralvin, her brother, appeared from the shadows. He had donned a set of armor that fit him like a second skin. It was made of a strange dark metal that shimmered when the light hit it. He nodded at Darren. "The people are ready," Ralvin said. "They trust you, Earthman." Darren shifted uneasily. "I don't know why they trust me. I'm just trying to keep us alive. You freed us. You stayed. That is enough," Valera said, her eyes steady. "Now we fight." Darren took a deep breath. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for this, but he had promised to help them. And he couldn't back out now. He checked his comm device again. No response from his earlier signal. He didn't know if it had reached anyone. And if it did, he had no idea when or if help would come. For now, they were on their own. The first sign of the enemy's arrival was a deep rumble from the surface. The ground trembled slightly, and the distant sound of engines grew louder. Darren clenched his fists, his mind racing. He had never felt this kind of tension before. The stakes were higher than anything he'd ever faced. Ralvin's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Earthman, focus. Do you know how to use one of these?" Ralvin held out a rifle similar to the one Valera carried. Darren hesitated, then nodded. "Not much, but I'll learn fast." "Good," Ralvin said, handing it to him. "You'll need to." Darren took the rifle, feeling its weight. It wasn't heavy, but it hummed faintly in his hands. He fumbled with the controls until Ralvin showed him the basics: how to charge it, how to fire, how to adjust the range. The aliens' weapons were different from anything he had seen before. They didn't fire bullets, but energy bolts that burned hot and fast. "Remember," Ralvin said, "they'll try to scare us first. They'll land and make demands. Ignore them. We hold here." Darren nodded, his hands tightening around the rifle. He could hear the growing hum of engines above now. The enemy was close. Valera touched his shoulder lightly. "Stay with us, Earthmen. Together, we can win this." He looked at her and saw no fear, only determination. He nodded again, trying to steady his breathing. The ground above shook harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Darren's scanner showed the enemy crafts landing just a few hundred meters away. The main ship remained in orbit, but these smaller crafts were clearly troop carriers. He couldn't tell how many soldiers they carried, but it was more than they had. "Get ready," Ralvin called out. The aliens around them took up their positions, weapons aimed toward the tunnel leading to the surface. Darren stood near Valera, his rifle raised. His palms were sweaty, his heart racing. This was it. A voice echoed down the tunnel. It was loud and harsh, distorted by some kind of translator. Prisoners of the Ankara Empire, surrender immediately, and your punishment will be swift. Resistance will only increase your suffering. Darren's grip tightened. The alien voices around him stayed silent, their resolve unshaken. The enemy voice continued. You have no chance of escape. Surrender now and spare yourselves further pain. Relvin glanced at Valera, then at Darren. Ignore them. Let them come to us. The hum of engines faded. Heavy footsteps echoed from the surface. Darren's scanner showed multiple signals moving toward the tunnel entrance. The enemy troops were advancing. Darren's pulse quickened. This was no simulation, no training exercise. This was real. He was about to fight for his life, and for theirs, and he wasn't going to run. The footsteps grew louder. Darren's heart pounded in his chest. He adjusted his grip on the alien rifle, his sweaty fingers slipping slightly before he tightened his hold. Beside him, Valera stood calm, her pale blue skin faintly glowing under the vault's low lights. Her own weapon was steady, her expression unshaken. Relvin, now wearing full armor, moved to the front of their group. The enemy soldiers appeared at the far end of the tunnel, their figures outlined by the faint light from the surface. They were tall, clad in dark armor with sharp edges, and moved with military precision. There were at least a dozen of them, far more than the handful of Valera's kin who were ready to fight. The enemy commander stepped forward, his voice booming. Prisoners of the Ankara Empire, you have one final chance to surrender. Lay down your weapons, and your punishment will be swift. Darren glanced at Valera. They're trying to intimidate us. They always do, she replied quietly. Don't speak. Just wait. Relvin raised his voice. We will never surrender. Leavin, ow, or you'll regret stepping foot on this ground. The commander laughed coldly. Regret? Your time in the dark has made you delusional. Very well. Prepare to be crushed. He gestured, and the soldiers moved forward, their weapons drawn. The Ankara troops were armed with sleek, black rifles that hummed with energy. They fanned out, taking positions along the tunnel walls as they advanced. The sound of boots on stone filled the air. Darren's mouth went dry. He had never been in a firefight before. His fingers felt clumsy on the alien rifle's trigger, but he remembered Relvin's brief instructions. Breathe. Aim. Fire. Wait for my signal, Relvin said quietly. The aliens on their side, about half a dozen fighters, including Valera, stood firm. They were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of knowing this terrain. The vault's design created natural choke points, and they had set up barriers using crates and old machinery. Darren kept his gaze forward, trying to steady his breathing. The first enemy soldier came closer, scanning the area with a glowing visor. Then another, and another. Now, Relvin shouted. A volley of energy bolts lit up the tunnel. The sound was deafening, a mix of sharp cracks and sizzling energy. The Ankara soldiers were caught off guard. 2 went down immediately, their armor sparking as they fell. The rest scrambled for cover, returning fire. Blue and red streaks of light crisscrossed the narrow space. Darren raised his rifle, aiming at a soldier who had taken cover behind a piece of fallen debris. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to focus. He fired once, missed. The bolt slammed into the wall, sending a shower of sparks. The enemy soldier turned his head toward him. Breathe, Darren muttered to himself. He aimed again. Fired. This time, the energy bolt struck the soldier's shoulder. The armor sparked and cracked, and the enemy dropped to one knee. Valera fired steadily beside him, her shots precise. Each time she pulled the trigger, another Ankara soldier fell. Her movements were smooth, controlled. Darren glanced at her in awe. She fought as though she had done this 100 times before. Relvin, leading from the front, moved swiftly between cover. His rifle unleashed a steady stream of energy bolts, keeping the enemy pinned. Even though the Ankara soldiers had superior numbers, they struggled to advance. The narrow tunnel gave the defenders a clear advantage. They didn't need to move forward. They just needed to hold. The enemy commander's voice rang out. Push forward. Overwhelm them. The remaining soldiers charged. They were met with a second wave of fire from the defenders. Darren gritted his teeth and kept shooting. One bolt hit an enemy's leg, another their weapon. He wasn't a marksman, but he was learning. Each shot built his confidence. But then the Ankara troops changed tactics. They lobbed small, glowing orbs. Explosive charges. One hit a barrier near Darren's position, detonating with a loud crack. He was thrown backward, landing hard on the ground. His ears rang, and his vision blurred for a moment. Valera was there in seconds, pulling him up. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," he said, though his chest ached. He grabbed his rifle, shaking off the dizziness. "What about the others?" "We're holding," she said, "but they're trying to push through." Darren got back into position. His hands steadied, his mind focused. He fired again, hitting another enemy soldier. The Ankara advance slowed. The defenders' strategy was working. Hit hard, keep them at a distance, and force them to retreat. After what felt like an eternity, the enemy commander shouted, "Fall back. Regroup." The remaining soldiers began to retreat, dragging their injured with them. The defenders didn't pursue. They held their ground, watching the enemy fade into the shadows of the tunnel. Darren exhaled, his arms trembling from the strain. He looked at Valera. "We did it." "For now," she said. "They'll be back." "But you fought well, Earthman." Ralvin stepped forward, his armor dented but his stance firm. "This was just the first wave. The real battle is still ahead." Darren nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He didn't feel like a soldier. He didn't feel like a hero. But he had stood his ground. And in this moment, that was enough. Darren sat on a crate inside the vault, breathing heavily. His arms ached from holding the alien rifle so long, and his ears were still ringing from the last explosive charge. Around him, the survivors regrouped. Some tended to the wounded, wrapping injuries with fabric strips or applying glowing gels that seemed to speed healing. Others inspected their weapons, making quick repairs or swapping out energy cells. Valera appeared beside him. Her silver hair was damp with sweat, and a faint bruise had started forming on her cheek. She offered him a small container of water. "Drink. You'll need your strength." Darren nodded and took a sip. The cool liquid eased his dry throat. He glanced at her. "That was just the first wave." "Yes," she said. "The Ankara will regroup. Next time, they'll bring heavier weapons. Maybe even a walker unit." "A walker?" he asked. Valera's expression darkened. "A machine, controlled remotely. Large, heavily armored, and armed with plasma cannons. If they deploy one, we'll be in real trouble." Darren frowned. His ship's repair was still incomplete, and his comm system hadn't received any replies. They were still alone, still outnumbered. He had expected to feel more confident after surviving the first attack, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavier on his shoulders. Ralvin approached, his armor scratched but intact. He carried a holo projector, which he set on the ground. A small display flickered to life, showing a map of the moon's surface and the positions of the enemy troops. "They've pulled back to their main landing zone. This gives us a little time." "How much time?" Darren asked. "Hours, matey," Ralvin said. "We need to strengthen our defenses and prepare for their next move." Darren looked at the map. "If they bring one of those walkers, do we have anything that can stop it?" Valera glanced at Ralvin, then at Darren. "There is one thing," she said. "A weapon hidden deeper in the vault. It's old, powerful, and unstable." Darren raised an eyebrow. "Unstable." Ralvin sighed. "It's a relic from before we were imprisoned. A weapon meant to destroy ships, not ground units. If we can activate it, it might be enough to disable a walker. But using it here, underground, could cause unintended consequences. Darren thought for a moment. Unintended consequences like what? Valeera hesitated. A collapse. Or worse. But if we face a walker without it, we have no chance. Darren rubbed his temples. The situation kept getting more complicated. He had come to this moon by accident, yet now he was making life-or-death decisions for an entire group of people. He looked up at Valeera and Ralvin. "Let's find it," he said. "We don't have a choice." Ralvin nodded. "I'll take a team and retrieve it. Valeera, stay here and prepare everyone." Darren stood. "I'll go with you." Valeera placed a hand on his arm. "You've done enough already. Let my brother handle this." Darren shook his head. "I'm part of this now. If something goes wrong, I need to see it for myself." Ralvin didn't argue. Instead, he motioned for Darren to follow. They moved deeper into the vault, through narrow passages, and down crumbling staircases. The air grew cooler and thinner. Ancient markings covered the walls, telling stories Darren couldn't read. He could only guess at the history of Valeera's people, at the struggles they had faced long before he arrived. Eventually, they reached a massive, sealed door. Ralvin activated a control panel, and the door groaned open. Inside was a chamber filled with strange, cylindrical devices. In the center stood a towering weapon, long, sleek, and pointed like a spear. It hummed faintly, its surface glowing with blue veins of energy. "This is it," Ralvin said. Darren stepped closer, feeling the energy pulse around him. "How do we use it?" Ralvin pointed to a console nearby. "The controls are simple. Aim, charge, and fire. But once it's activated, it can't be moved again. It's too delicate. Once we place it near the surface, it will be a one-time use." Darren nodded slowly. "It's our only chance." The two of them carefully deactivated the safety locks and began moving the weapon out of the chamber. It floated slightly above the ground, supported by a field generator, but it was still heavy and difficult to maneuver. They returned to the main vault, where the others had already begun reinforcing the entrances and setting up additional barriers. Valeera's eyes widened when she saw the weapon. "I didn't think it was still operational." "Barely," Ralvin said, "but it should be enough." Darren helped position the weapon near the main entrance. The plan was simple. When the walker arrived, they would let it advance into range, then fire. If the weapon worked, it would disable the walker in one shot. If it didn't, he didn't want to think about that. As they worked, Darren caught his breath and looked around. The aliens he had freed were moving with purpose, following Valeera and Ralvin's instructions. They trusted each other. They trusted him. For the first time, he felt something close to hope. "Let's get ready," he said. The next attack was coming, and this time, they would meet it head-on. The chamber was quiet. Darren stood near the massive weapon, his hand hovering over the control panel. Around him, Valeera and Ralvin checked their positions. The others prepared their weapons and reinforced the barriers. They had only one chance. When the walker appeared, they would have to fire this ancient weapon and disable it before it reached the vault. "Do you think this will work?" Darren asked, glancing at Ralvin. The tall alien warrior tightened his grip on his rifle. "It has to. Otherwise, we won't be standing here much longer." Valeera nodded. "Our people are ready. Whatever happens, we stand together." Darren took a deep breath. He wasn't a soldier, but somehow he had found himself in the middle of a battle, fighting for a group of people he barely knew. Yet, as he looked at their determined faces, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for them. The scanner beeped. The enemy was on the move. "They're coming," Ralvin said. Darren checked the display. Multiple signals were converging on their position. And then he saw it. The walker's signal. It was bigger, stronger, and moving steadily toward the vault. "Everyone, hold your positions," Valeera called out. The sound of heavy metal footsteps echoed through the tunnels. Dust fell from the ceiling as the ground trembled. The enemy soldiers advanced in formation, their rifles at the ready. Behind them, the walker emerged. It was a towering machine, its armor gleaming darkly, its twin plasma cannons glowing with power. It moved slowly, methodically, as if it knew nothing could stop it. Darren's heart pounded. He had seen mechs and holovids before, but this was different. It was real, and it was coming for them. Relvin barked an order. Focus your fire on the soldiers. Hold them back while we wait for the walker to get closer. Energy bolts filled the air as the defenders opened fire. The enemy soldiers returned fire, the narrow tunnel turning into a storm of flashing lights and deafening noise. Darren aimed his rifle, squeezing off shots. His training was limited, but he had learned quickly over the past few days. Each hit brought him a little more confidence. Valera moved with precision, her shots taking down enemy soldiers one by one. Relvin led from the front, directing their forces, shouting commands. The defenders fought fiercely, but the enemy kept advancing. Darren glanced at the weapon. The walker was almost in range. Just a little closer, he muttered. The walker stopped suddenly, its cannons charged, glowing brighter. Darren felt a cold wave of fear. If it fired before they could use the weapon, it would destroy their defenses in one shot. Hold on, Valera whispered, her eyes on the machine. The walker fired. A massive bolt of plasma tore through the barrier, throwing debris in all directions. Darren hit the ground, shielding his face. The heat washed over him, leaving a dull ringing in his ears. Now, Relvin shouted.